Pro vacationing tip. If the resort tells you not to leave the resort, you might want to listen to them. Otherwise, you could end up in a living nightmare scenario, much like the characters do in Infinity Pool. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
Guided by a seductive and mysterious woman, a couple on vacation venture outside the resort grounds and find themselves in a culture filled with violence and untold horror. An unfortunate accident soon leaves them facing a zero-tolerance policy for their crimes. But if you have enough money, a twisted solution could be your ticket to freedom, if you are willing to pay. Now, I knew very little about this movie going into it. I think I actually saw the trailer one time in front of a movie I saw last year in the theater. And honestly, that is probably the best way to go into a movie like this, knowing as little as possible just so you can be as confused as the rest of us. I'm not gonna lie to you, there were points in this movie where I had no idea what the hell was going on.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
Because of all this is going to be one of the more difficult reviews I have to do. Because I feel like anything I say could be considered a spoiler, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm somewhat vague. That's just me trying to deliver on my spoiler-free promise. First and foremost, I have to say I really dug the overall concept being presented to us in this film. Everything from the world that they've created where something like this could happen, and the rules of that society seem very well thought out and purposeful. The whole message behind this movie, at least from my perspective, is how living without consequences affects a person's mentality.
That makes sense.
Naturally, a situation like that would give you a god complex. It would make you feel invincible. Basically what it is that if you commit a unspeakable crime in this society, if you have enough money, you can pay to have yourself cloned, and then your clone will receive your very strict punishment in your place. With the only caveat being you have to sit there and watch your clone be punished. So it does create an interesting dynamic when we see characters literally watching themselves be executed.
Execute them. Bogus.
And just the idea that you can throw money around in this poor and somewhat desperate country, and you basically have free reign to do whatever you want, was a very interesting concept to me. And I love how they show you how this situation affects the characters. The people that have experienced this on more than one occasion soon find themselves caught in this never-ending cycle of violence.
Something very familiar about all this.
The other huge positive in this movie for me is obviously Mia Goth. As if you didn't hear me singing her praises enough after last year's X and Pearl. But honestly, she deserves every single ounce of praise she is getting. There's just something very captivating yet unsettling about her anytime she's in a movie.
But you one crazy ass.
And this was yet another standout character and performance for me. And in a day and age where we don't have a lot of standout performances, that is refreshing. There's layers to her character and her performance. Half the time as an audience member, you don't know if you want to be seduced by her or run as far away from her as humanly possible. To me, she just has such a bright future, and after all these recent roles she's had, I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does next. Alexander Skarsgård plays the male lead in the movie, and he's basically the audience's window into this twisted world, and he also has a lot to do from a character standpoint. We see him go from this kind of cocky yet false confident writer who isn't really as successful as he wants to be, to this broken man by the end of the movie, and you buy into it every single step of the way, and that's a credit to his performance. In fact, I felt the performances overall, even the ones that were a bit over the top, were all very well done.
I like it a lot.
It should also be noted that this is a very violent movie. We see public executions, people having their face beaten in, and all in very gory detail. So this movie was directed by Brandon Cronenberg. Yes, the son of the legendary David Cronenberg. So naturally, this movie has a very Cronenbergian flair to it. And by that, I mean it has a lot of the weirdest things imaginable. Why? Infinity Pool is one of those movies that is almost too weird for its own good. Now, I understand the artistic side of this conversation and the director's freedom of expression, and I'm never one to talk down to something that's trying to do something unique, but I also find it a bit distracting when some directors make these choices narratively that don't really jive with me personally and kind of take me out of the film, even if it's only temporarily. You know, I'm alright with psychedelic visuals and weird sex orgies, but do we really need to see someone ejaculating on the ground?
I've been dropping loads around this house like a goddamn dump truck.
Does that really add to the story in any way? Do we need multiple shots of lactating breasts? Apparently Brandon thought so. Everything from semen to pee to blood to breast milk. There's just so many fluids. So many.
And there is semen all over everything.
And I fail to see what most of them add to the movie other than pure shock value. And I've just never been into shock value cinema. It's a shame because things like that are oftentimes deal breakers for me, even though that's not necessarily the case here. One kind of weird Cronenbergian thing that I did love was the whole pre-cloning process, where they basically put a swim cap on you and they pry your mouth open and stick you in a room that's filled with this blood-like substance, again, more fluids. My point is that we had enough good mind trip type stuff that we really didn't need to be excessive elsewhere.
Take it down a notch.
I have to quickly talk about the ending because we know how hard it is for Hollywood to stick the landing sometimes. And much to my surprise, this movie does end on a somewhat somber note. A note which is consistent with the whole theme of the movie, by the way. For a moment while watching it, I thought it was going to turn into this generic finale, where the good guy just has to fight back against the people who have been oppressing him, but it wasn't that, and that was refreshing to me. Overall, I have to say that Infinity Pool definitely isn't for everyone. I think there's a lot of random stuff going on at times that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And while stuff like that is frustrating at times, I have to give the movie props for at least keeping me guessing while I was watching it. Nothing about it was predictable. It's trippy, it's disturbing, it's violent. It is something that I think might benefit from multiple viewings, but you would definitely have to be the type of person who would be interested in putting yourself through that once again.
Just a sick world we're living in. Sick people.
I appreciated the ambitious concept and the unconventional execution. Its main flaws lie in the sheer randomness of some of its visuals. There was a lot to like about Infinity Pool. I didn't really like it as much as I thought I was going to like it, but I still think it's worth watching if you're into this sort of thing, and that's why I'm going to give it the Cathouse.
Saved by kitty litter.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.